According to Li Ka-shing, information and communication technology unlocks the value of time, allowing and enabling multitasking, multi-channels, multi-this, and multi-that. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to this online forum highlighting ICT and Internet policy and regulations. To start with, may I request everybody to remain silent for the invocation and followed by the national anthem. Thank you so much. At this moment, let us all welcome the moderator of today's forum, none other than Ms. Emerald Bontillo, for the introduction of speakers and their corresponding topics. Let us all clap our hands.
So, good day, everyone. Today's forum is all about ICT and Internet policy and regulations. We have four different topics for this event. First is about freedom of expression and censorship, which will be introduced to us by our speaker, Ms. Rosa Mikalo. The second topic is all about privacy and security, and we will have Mr. Justin Ray Benito to talk us through the topic. Next, we have Ms. Rizal Joy Bintaha, who will be sharing about the topic surveillance and topic retention. And last but not the least, of course, we have Ms. Gazelle May Villamore, who will be presenting to us about e-pollutants and e-waste. All our speakers are second-year students from Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in science course.
Okay, let's start with Miss Kala.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. So I am the first to talk about the first issue, which is the freedom of expression and censorship. Next. We hear the word freedom of expression everywhere, but we don't know what is the limitation of the word freedom of expression and censorship. So now we will talk about this and we will know what is the freedom of expression. Next, Jess. Next. Next again. So, what is freedom of expression? So, by definition, it is the right to express one's ideas and opinions freely through speech, writing, and other forms of communication, but without deliberately causing harm to others' character or reputation by false or misleading statement. So, as I mentioned, it is a right. So, this right hold our own opinion and to express them freely without government interference. This includes the right to express our own view aloud through public protest and demonstration or through published articles, books, or leaflets, television or radio broadcasting, work of art, the internet, and the social media, which is very common nowadays. Back, back, back. So censorship. So what is censorship and what is connection of censorship and freedom of expression? So censorship occurs when individual or groups try to prevent others from saying or printing or depicting words and images. Next. Next. So in censorship, we have what we call the censors. So what is the censors? So censors seek to limit the freedom of thought and expression by restricting the spoken words, printed matter like the newspaper or journals, symbolic messages, freedom of association, book, art, music, movies, television programs, and internet sites. So since freedom of expression is a right, we have here the First Amendment right. So what is the First Amendment rights? So it is the right of freedom of expression. It is an important right of free people everywhere guaranteed by the First Amendment. The definition of free speech includes the nonverbal, visual, and symbolic forms of expression and the right to speak anonymously. So by this First Amendment of rights, we need to know that since Philippines is a democratic country and the freedom of expression is very evident nowadays, the journalist and the media has a very important part of expressing their opinions publicly. So this right helped them to criticize the government freely with a public institution without free of prosecution. And as I mentioned that this amendment of rights help us to speak anonymously. It doesn't mean that we have a right of expression. We have the right to express ourselves if we need to give our personal information directly just to express our opinion. So we can express our thoughts and expression and speak to the public anonymously. Okay, next. Next, Jess. So, so the First Amendment prudence. So this is the things that are the this is the things or the negative side of using our freedom of expression um in the bad way. So these are the perjury and fraud, defamation, obscene speech, incitement of panic, and incitement to crime, fighting words and sedition, misleading advertisement. Another thing, if we don't know a limitation in freedom of speech, we could go we could relate to this things like libel, slander, obscenity, pornography, sedition, incitement, and etc. What just like what you can see in the screen. So it doesn't mean that we have our freedom of expression. The government cannot stop us from imposing censorship in media because the purpose of censorship is also to protect other human rights, such as the right to respect others' personal life or their privacy. So it doesn't mean that we have our freedom of expression, we are allowed to go into the personal life of others. So we need to respect their privacy as well. So that's all. Thank you for listening. The first issue about the freedom of expression and censorship.
So, good evening, everyone. So, I'm here to talk about the privacy and security issue. For a second. Okay, so back to the issue. So, privacy and security. So, what is the difference between privacy and security? No, we all know that they are mostly the same, but they have different uses for different situations. So let's talk on that, and let's talk about privacy. So privacy refers to the control that you have over your personal information and how that information is used. Personal information is any information that can be used to determine your identity. So mostly, no, for your private life, you are the one who's controlling it and not anybody else. So that's the main thought of privacy. Now let's go to security. Refers to the protection against the unauthorized access of data. We put security controls in place to limit who can access the information, which refers to how protected your personal information. So this is the like the outer layer of your privacy, most likely security from other sources that could access you in the cyber media in particular. So why online privacy is important? It is very important for all people to know whom they can trust with their information online. Though security programs and privacy settings can help block some issues, such as computer viruses and cookies, we should also learn how to create strong passwords and protect our private information. So you must not rely on mostly on block apps. No? Sometimes there are still ways to hack into your way on your computer or on your phone. So in this way, You'll help to protect your identity and personal privacy from theft. You'll safeguard your business online privacy against cybercrime, and you'll be social media savvy. So it means that if you are very careful enough to protect you, you will have your identity and personal privacy from theft. So meaning nobody is gonna use you or your name for other purposes, as well as your business for some crimes like banks and online business. So why do you need online security? A breach of your privacy is a threat to your security online and even physical. Here are just a few threats that you really need to consider. So the first is phishing. It is the act of obtaining sensitive and personal information by sending links that pretend to be reliable but are actually lead to malware. So these are like trying to bait you into sites that actually cause virus to your computer or device. Malware, it is a short form of malicious software. The name suggests that it refers to a software that is intended to intrude or invade your computer. So these are the one that could actually cause viruses like apps, apps that are not protected by your computer because malware. Identity theft, obtaining your personal records and other person can easily pretend to have mentioned and uses it for crimes online like transactions, etc. So important security. So it protects the organization's function and enables the safe operation of applications and limited organizations and systems. Protects the data the organization collects and uses. It safeguards the technology the organization uses. So most likely, security is just like a public privacy thing or group privacy. So meaning when you refer to security, it means that systems on a specific group is protected by something or a back-end data or a security app to actually to let them say that they are safe from hackers as well as uh, those who want to get some information on their organization. So ways to immediately improve online security. So these are some of most of many. So use secure authentication, avoid using public networks, never forget to log out, check the privacy setting of your social media accounts, read the link before you click. So these are most likely the most basic. You also especially avoid using public networks like public Wi-Fi's, etc. They might that is not safe. Most likely, those who don't have Wi-Fi passwords, those are public networks that are easily accessible by others, especially the IP. IP address is the most common one to be fished out by hackers or thefts. What is a cybersecurity incident? So security incidents are events that occur within a potential impact to an organization which can represent a cybersecurity threat or attack. A security incident is any attempted or actual unauthorized access, use, disclosure, modification, or destruction of information. And lastly, security incidents indicate the failure of security measures or the breach of the organization's systems or data. So this is where cybercrime is concerned, no? Invasion of cyberspace or a like you are accessing unauthorized app sites that are not allowed to you, or you are hacking into that. That is actually a cybersecurity incident. So examples of security incidents include computer system breach, unauthorized access to, use, or system software use, unauthorized changes to system software or data, loss or theft of equipment, storing institutional data, denial of service attack, interfere with the intended use of IT, and compromise user accounts. So these are like invasion of your computer files, as well as the changes to the system, and also injecting malware and viruses. So types of security incidents. So we have tackled about this: brute force attacks, email, and web. So these are most likely the ones that are very common, especially to those elderly who are accessing the internet, and they are the most likely to have these threats very, very easily. So internet privacy and security laws. So we have laws that are actually trying to protect us. A patchwork of federal and state laws apply. Some key federal laws affecting online privacy include the Federal Trade Commission Act, Electronic Communication Privacy Act, Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, Controlling the Assault of Non-Solicited Pornography and Marketing Act, Financial Services Modernization, and Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions. So sample incidents, investment scams, romance fraud, and so on. So how to prevent data and security breaches? Data breaches can occur due to many reasons like hackers. So let us look at some ways to prevent the data security breaches. So protect your information, reduce transfer of data, restrict download, shred files, ban an encrypted device, secure transfer, a good password, and automate security. So 5 tips on how to stay safe online. So use unique passwords, log out from services, especially on public places or public Wi-Fi areas. Keep your software up to date, especially your antivirus software, and beware phishing attacks and take backups, so backup or cloud. So that's all for me. Thank you so much, and have a good one.
So hello everyone. Good day. I'm here today as your reporter. I am Rizal Joy Bintaha, and today I'm going to report about
Hold on, wait. A technical issue. For a moment.
okay. Hello everyone. Good day. Today we're going to talk about the surveillance and data retention. Now, what is this surveillance and data retention? Let us start. Okay. Okay, what are the objectives of this lesson or this topic? It is first to define the meaning of surveillance and data retention. And then the second one is to differentiate surveillance and the data retention. Okay. Now, what do you mean by surveillance? Okay, by its definition, it is monitoring of behavior, activities, or information for the purpose of information gathering, influencing, managing, or directing. Just like, for example, what are the examples of this? Okay, a private detective was hired to follow a cheating spouse before divorce proceedings. That is an example of surveillance, all right? Now, there are different techniques of this surveillance. Uh, if you are having these techniques, it means um, use. Kailang ikat to. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Four things. What are these four things? First is the same person, same time of the day, same activity, and the same place. Now, what is the data villains? Okay, earlier we talked about surveillance. Now we're going to talk about data villains. Okay, what is data villains? It is a practice of monitoring or collecting online data. What types of online data you can collect? For example, it can track your GPS coordinates, credit card transactions, email, or social networks. That is an example of collecting online data. Or when you are using digital media often, which leaves traces of data and creates a digital footprint of the activity. Now, next. Okay, there are given types of surveillances. What are these given types of surveillances? We have first
The counter surveillance, the practice of avoiding surveillance or making surveillance difficult. But there are most likely another meaning of this. What is this? It is like the practice of detecting surveillances. You detected that you have been surveillanced by another person, or you are being watched. Now, to avoid making surveillance more difficult, this is what you call these counter surveillance. Okay, this is watching those who are watching you. Another is principals often employ a counter surveillance operative or a team to follow them. Now, third, the counter surveillance is a role to ensure that any unknown potential threats are not watching the principal. Now, the second one we have is the inverse surveillances, which means that the practice of the reversal surveillance on other individual or groups. Now we have the third one, the surveillance. It is a recording of an activity or an event by a particular or onlooker, especially using personal devices such as smartphones and wearable cameras. Now, that is our types of surveillances. Okay, now the question is who collects and analyzes this data? It is first the companies that you've been working on, if the companies have been surveillancing you for a background reasons. Now, second is the government. If you look like suspicious, then they will have someone who will surveillance you for like threats and anything like that. Now, third is the individuals may we refer to as a mafia or anything like that that which wants your life to be in trouble. That is why we have to be careful of everything like that. Okay, next. Now, what is a data retention? Data retention is a storage and use of information from the communication system. Okay. Now, what is its policy? A protocol within an organization for retaining information for operational use while ensuring adherence to the laws, regulations concerning to them. Now, what is the data retention period? It is the amount of time that an organization holds into information. That is called the data retention period. All right. Thank you very much.
For a moment. Okay, carry on.
Okay, so now let's take a quick look on issue number 4, the e-pollutants from e-waste. So electronic and electric waste, or e-waste, is defined as end-of-life electronic products, including computers, television sets, transformers, capacitors, wires, and cables, are major global environmental concern. The crude recyc- the crude recycling of e-waste releases a persistent toxic substances such as heavy metals. And these heavy metals are polybrominated diphenyl ethers, polychlorinated dibenzodioxins, polychlorinated dibenzofurans, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and polychlorinated biphenyls. And the environmental pollution and health risks caused by the improper disposal of e-waste has become an urgent issue. So let's take a look at these studies about these two studies these two studies about the issue of e-pollutants from e-waste. Study is entitled E-Waste, a Global Hazard. So, at the global scale, electronic waste or e-waste pollution has been considered as a major threat to human health due to its exposure through numerous pathways. So in this study, the authors summarized the current scientific information regarding the categories of e-waste. This study also indicated that e-waste exposure may cause potential human health hazards. Based on this current state of knowledge, strategies can then be proposed to reduce human exposure to e-waste. And then the second study is entitled Tracking the Global Distribution of Persistent Organic Pollutants Accounting for E-Waste Exports to Developing Regions. So, this study was the first to integrate the global transport of e-waste with their long-range transport in air and water. The results call for integrated chemical management strategies on the global scale. So large amount of e-waste is generated by ICT. These are in particular terminal equipment used for computing, broadcasting, telephony, and peripherals. So the accumulated e-waste is due to rapid turnover of equipments due to rapid improvement of software. So the quantities of e-waste are increasing in both developed and developing countries using less environmentally responsible procedures. Then, while material waste can be destroyed by crushing, toxic materials brought about by different equipments requires utmost management. So that's all on the issue number 4.
All right, thank you so much, speakers, for all that information that you have shared to us. Indeed, it is very rampant nowadays since we are all exposed to internet, since we are all internet users. And at this moment, our speakers will entertain questions. So let's have first our moderator, and then any of the audience can also ask questions as well. Let's start with Miss Bentilio.
Okay, starting off with Miss Rosa May Calo. How far does our freedom of expression go in the internet? What are our limitations?
So thank you for your question, Ms. Bintilio. So our freedom of expression is limited. We can express ourselves in a limited way online, especially in the internet, as long as we know our limitations. And our limitations is not engaging into a false statement, misleading statement, such as perjury, defamation, oral defamation, libel, and etc.
Thank you. We have here follow-up questions from Miss Mikasa Paraso and Miss Ginette Monteseven. This is the question of Miss Paraso. Now that we know what is freedom of speech is all about, do you think it is good or bad? Please further explain your answer.
Pardon, Miss Bintilio.
Again, I repeat the question. This is from Miss Paraso. Now that we know what is freedom of speech is all about, do you think it is good or bad? Please further explain your answer.
Okay. So freedom of expression has two sides. It can be a good or bad. First one, the good thing about freedom of expression is we can express ourselves, our opinions, to other people so that they will gain information and knowledge. But the disadvantage of freedom of expression is this may lead to defamation, perjury, pornography, fights, mga fake news, and ana. So that is the reason why there is censorship. It is to limit the it is to limit the things that is not good na the expression that is um, being said online or in the news or journals.
Okay, thank you. Last follow-up question from Ginette Monteseven. With the advancement and development of ICT technology, how does censorship bring impacts and changes to our freedom of expression?
Okay. Wait lang. So censorship is it occurs when someone is limiting the limit. Wait lang. Wait. Okay. So the impact of having censorship in our freedom of expression is that the bad thing or the bad things or the negative effects, the negative sides of freedom of information, the misleading statement, the fake news is being censored. So meaning it does not expose to the public. Okay, if it is exposed in the public, so there are many consequences that will happen. So that is the huge impact of censorship in our freedom of expression. And the negative, just what I said earlier, the censorship has two sides man Japon siya. If too much censorship is we cannot expose ourselves mga makuha na nga to ang mga freedom of expression nga dili na maka-express atong selves with regards to the government and political views. Okay.
Thank you so much. For Mr. Justin Ray Benito,
Hello. Hello.
okay. So you recently discussed the differences between security and privacy. Do you think there are any similarities?
Well, for me, of course, there are similarities when it comes to these two kind of ground of the privacy and security. Most likely, the most important thing is safety, no? So safety is what runs up everyone or every person to their specified group or specified individual. So privacy and security are both in the same page, referring to safety. No, but I cannot mostly say that these are all the same because there are still differences between the two, as I have mentioned earlier, that security is more likely on the cyber space or protecting a group, organization, website, or even your personal information is on the internet. Privacy is on your own, and you have the will to change it. But when you are referring to security, it is limited to others to access you. So that is all I can say about those differences and similarities.
A follow-up question from Ms. JD Malik. Okay. I'm sorry, but last question for you, Mr. Benito, from Ms. Roland. When accepting cookies in a website, does the site author has the power to access our files in our account?
I would say no, because it is illegal, especially if you don't have the permission to access others' information, or the author wants to access us. He or she needs a permission as well, the same as we ask permission for his or her site to be accessed. No, so that is the borderline between the thing that I mentioned, that you can't just access everyone's site, if especially if they are the one going into your site and you're telling them that, hey, I need your information, I need your personal information to access the site. That is illegal, and that is you may be called, like, if they access your personal information from that author, you will be cased as you will have this scenario where you will have identity theft, right? So your personal your credit cards, for example, your bank accounts, or anything that is connected to that name or that personal information might be in a crucial spot, because it is not advisable, no, for that people to be like that, because if you are publishing a site that is free, you don't actually need to give to uh, want to ask for other people's personal information or access to their personal information. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For this question is for Miss Rosel Joy Bentaha. Miss Rosel,
Hello.
so here's your question. What is the difference between surveillance and surveillance?
Okay, okay. Um, the differences between surveillance and surveillance is that surveillance, which means in French above or sus means below, it means that the person who makes the surveillance for you is participated in the group where you take the video, or he is the one taking the video for you. However, in the surveillance, it is a third party and out of the group that you are taking surveillance about. That is what's the difference about surveillance and surveillance.
Okay, thank you, Miss Rosel. You have a follow-up question from Miss Chanel Panas. What are the pros and cons of surveillance?
Well, there are different pros and cons of surveillance, and I will just enumerate some of them. First is the advantages of it is it can deter crime. It can monitor scenarios and activities. It can gather evidences, arrive at the right decision, and of course, we can maintain records. And on the other side, the pros of it or the disadvantages is that the privacy is an issue. It can be costly affair, all right? And third, it can be vulnerable. And fourth, we cannot stop theft. Yes.
Thank you so much. Last but not the least, for Miss Lizelle Villamor. Miss Lizelle,
Yes.
okay, so this is your question. Electronics has a lot of components. So are there different processes that recycling facilities do for each type of components?
Okay, so regional recycling sorts electronics and stacks them into skids for safe transport to recycling facilities. And then the workers at the recycling facilities um break the electronics apart into different components by hand. All elements are all elements are broken down into raw materials like glass, plastic, and precious metals like aluminum and gold. So the method to extract the raw materials from the e-waste are sometimes infrared light through infrared light or sometimes so that's the processes.
Thank you so much. That's all for the questions.
All right, thank you so much, speakers, for answering all those questions and clarifying things out. At this moment, we would like to hear your concluding statements. In the same order, we have Ms. Carlo, Mr. Benito, Ms. Vizbaja, and Ms. Villamor.
So, so as a service teacher, we need to be mindful in using ICT in executing our freedom of expression and to understand censorship. Because as a pre-service teacher, we also need to protect human rights such as a right to respect others and their personal or private lives.
For me, no, I would also like to say that ICT is a very tricky one, especially when you are tackling the internet. Internet is very toxic, very harmful environment. It is not that safe as you might think. So always remember that whenever you are accessing a site, be sure to look for sources that make it very legitimate. and always think before you click. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. As shown, there is a quite bit of consideration when discussing about surveillancing a person or a system or a company. However, we must take into mind that when it comes to looking up to the personal background of a person, we must think of the privacy that a person has. And now, if when there's somebody who is looking after us, we must take into consideration that we must report it to the higher levels of the government so that um we will avoid conflicts and bigger issues and even death. Thank you.
Okay, so learners should understand not just the advantages of using technology, but also how to protect themselves from the dangers that technology possess in their life. So both teachers and students should be aware of the e-waste that is being tossed into the planet because everyone is accountable of it.
All right, thank you so much, speakers, for all the reminders. Anyways, before we going to formally end this forum, I may request our moderator to give us a short wrap up.
Okay, now that we know ICT and its policy, this is the question that we should ponder on. Why should we be interested in ICT policy? Because the way ICTs develop will have an enormous impact on the possibilities of working for social justice and sustainable development. If we do not take an active part in ICT policy making, we will have no say in how our societies develop and how the future unfolds. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to our moderator, Miss Emerald Bentilio, to our speakers, Mr. Justin Benito, Miss Rosel Bintaha, Miss Gazelle Villamor, and Miss Rosa Calo. Thank you so much. And to all the audience, and thank you so much for your presence here. And this is Eleni Dama, your host for today, and I now formally close this program. Thank you and God bless us all.
Yes.
Wala.
Manihapon na
Yay!
Nice, nice, nice.
Yay!
Salamat sa
Mag-out
time,
po guys,
guys.
so wala nang good data. Bye!
Bye guys. Ay, ang kuan may
Bye.
video. Ang
Bye,
vid-
congrats all.
wait, ang video. Kasi mag-send sa GC sa video.
Sige lang, kami na.